Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the fourth and final episode of the VSR-10 build series. First of all, I'd like to apologize for any background noise that we've got on this video. I've got some guys around fixing the heating system, so if you hear any shouting or anyone swearing or throwing something, don't worry about it. So just to recap, those of you who have been following the build will know where we're up to, but just in case those of you who are new viewers, this is what the rifle is sitting at now. It's doing about 517 FPS with this setup, but today we're going to make a short barrel quick conversion, okay? And by that we mean I can change out the outer barrel very quickly and make it a short barrel rifle. So I'm going to undo this screw here and then unscrew the outer barrel. And I'm going to remove the bolt and cylinder and everything here, as well as this is going to be overhauled. So the first thing that we're going to be working with is the Action Army Twisted Cylinder for the VSR-10. We have done a review of this cylinder on the channel. If you haven't checked it out yet, go check it out. Or if you can't find it on the channel, it will be released in the coming week or so. Here's the Twisted Cylinder. As you can see, it's very, very nice with these twist cuts into the body there. As always, the front section of the cylinder head has a little bit of a notch in here. Okay, it's not as smooth as we'd like it to be, so we have gone at it with a very fine 1500 grit sandpaper just to take off the edge there. This is so that when it inserts itself into the hop-up rubber, it does not scratch or damage the hop-up rubber, okay? So we're going to unscrew the cylinder head, put that to one side, and then we're just going to lube the inside of the twisted cylinder. I will be using some very thick silicone grease, coating up and down the cylinder there. So what we've done here is just put some silicone grease on the Springer Custom Works twist type piston, and what we're going to do is reverse install it this way. Be very careful pushing it in because the inside of the cylinder is relatively dry. Very slowly in a twisting motion to bring it down. Then I'm going to install the spring guide from Springer Custom Works. It's a very heavy unit, and we're using an M150 spring from Action Army. Just install it like that. Then we're going to very gently install the piston over the spring. Right, I've now just cleaned my hand because I don't want any silicone grease on the cylinder head or the outside of the cylinder head there. Sometimes I will put a drop of silicone oil on this O-ring. I usually remove it and just make sure it's well lubed because you don't want it drying out inside your build. And you just install it very carefully like so. Push it in there, again looking after those O-rings. And then you thread it on, making sure that you are not cross-threading it. Very important, because it's very easy to cross-thread these. And when you tighten this, you can use a cylinder head key, or you could just use an Allen key. What I do is put something plasticky and protective on one side, insert a well-fitting Allen key or Allen wrench, and then tighten it with the plastic wrap on this side, protecting it, okay? Once you've done that, it should be together like this. As you can see, it's very easy to tighten and it doesn't take much force. If it does take force, something's gone wrong, so don't force it. So that's the Action Army Twisted Cylinder complete with the Action Army M150 spring and the Springer Custom Works spring guide and piston. Next up, we're going to use the Action Army bolt handle and an Action Army bolt end cap. Just going to apply a little bit of grease on this end here. Do note that you don't have to use silicone oil on this part. You could use molybdenum disulfide or any grease that isn't chemically harmful. Be careful not to get any grease inside those threads in there, okay? Then you install the bolt handle on just like that. And you take the plunger and spring out of the original Tokyo Marui end cap and install it in here. Those of you that don't know, I have cut this spring down just so that the tension isn't so high. I've cut about 1.5 coils off there, which I noted in a different video. But just in case, if you're new to the channel, that's what I did. So that rather than the plunger sticking out like this and having this much tension, it only sticks out like this and has much less tension. This is because the Action Army bolt handle is a lot lighter than the original Tokyo Marui one, and it doesn't require so much tension. To install the end cap, there's a little set screw here which you have to remove with an Allen key or hex wrench. Then the end cap just comes off, and this slides on like that. Then you put the original Tokyo Marui screw back in. So here is the parts installed. Now, those of you who are actually doing this build and are watching this video now, don't be worried if this is binding very heavily against that part, and that part it will be at first, okay? Over time, what it should do is gradually grind itself together and create smooth surfaces for each other so that it becomes very, very smooth like this. If you can't wait for that, you can do what we did and use sandpaper and sand all the areas that grind into each other. So that would be, you don't have to touch this. That would be both sides of this bolt handle, on here and on here, and maybe the face of the bolt end cap as well. All you do is smooth them off with sandpaper to give them a bit more sheen and a bit more of a smoothed feel so that they can glide across each other. Remember to lube them afterwards, after you've cleaned off all the sanding parts, of course. And if you're having trouble with the plunger catching onto these recesses and it becomes very hard to move the handle once it's clipped in, what you can do is slightly sand this part here and this part here to create a ramp so that it glides in slightly easier, okay? You don't want to take off too much material, you just want to make a slightly less steep and less aggressive ramp here so it can easily plunge in, glide along here, and then pop back out, pop back in. And what you should end up with is when this screw is fully tightened inside, it should just come up with one finger and very little effort. But don't worry too much, it will smooth over time and become very, very nice. You then pop this back in, and then put that screw back in. So I'm now going to install the hop-up unit into the outer barrel. For the outer barrel, I'm going to be using a PDI ball barrel base. Okay, so those of you that don't know, PDI is a Japanese company that makes very, very high quality parts, one of my favorites, for the VSR-10 and some other platforms. The ball barrel base is literally just the base of the barrel, meaning it has threads in the front there, so you can buy different length PDI front barrels, or the actual outer barrel, the front section, and they thread in to this part here, okay? So you can have many different barrel lengths to suit your build needs, and that way you don't have to buy just like the whole unit and uninstall this every time. You can just unscrew the barrel and adjust everything. They also do them in different styles, I believe. I believe they do some fluted ones, and they're very high quality. I haven't owned any personally, but I'm very happy with the quality of this PDI ball barrel base. And the reason that I'm going for the base only is because I'm doing an incredibly short barreled build, as you guys know. So let's install the hop-up chamber by Action Army. I've done quite a few videos, well, a couple of videos on this unit before, so this is a new one. Let's get this opened and installed. If you want to know how to install this step by step, then check out our build guides. We've got a couple of them. We've also got a couple of videos on this unit. I'm not going to go through it step by step on this. I'm just telling you this is what we're installing. A brand new hop-up unit. This is Revamp 2. Not really generation 3, but it is the second revamp after the initial release, which means this has gone through a couple of changes. It's just either missing a couple of screws or added a couple of screws. It's not a big deal. Now, because this build is a short barrel build, I'm going for a very short inner barrel. And this is the 9-ball power barrel. It is only 162.5 millimeters in length, designed for a Tokyo Marui high cap 5.1. Not the original barrel length, but the extended barrel length. If you were to install this kind of inner barrel onto a high capper, it would protrude quite a lot. It's for one of the extended slides. And this is what it looks like. You can imagine normally the inner barrels are 300 and something millimeters in length. This is almost half that size, or just over half that size. Again, we're going to be going with the maple leaf hop rubbers. This one is a 70-degree unit. I believe this one was Autobot. I'm a big fan of these maple leaf hop rubbers now. They are very, very good, really good at sealing, and I just love them. So that's what we're going with. Right, let's install this into the hop unit. Sorry, I'm not talking very much, but sometimes I just concentrate on this part. I just love the building part of these. In fact, my hobby is building, making, or modifying rather than playing, as some of you who are veterans to the channel know. Again, we're going with the maple leaf hop-up tensioner. Just going to put some grease on the end of this spring so it actually stays in place. Make sure the hop-up nub is actually inside the recess and not caught on the edges. There we go, everything in place. Perfect. Just like that. Now I'm going to install the barrel spacer into this ball barrel base. This is just a barrel spacer made by Action Army, I believe, and it was designed for the G-Spec barrel. Let's see if it fits. Yes, it fits perfectly. Okay, so I'm just going to push that down in there. And it's as simple as that. It is fully installed. So I'm going to install the inner barrel and hop-up unit this way, just like this. It slides in there. And I'm just going to try and a little bit of friction from the barrel spacer. I don't really need the barrel spacer on this super short barrel, but I thought, you know, since I have it, I'm going to install it. There we go, roughly about there. Now, as you can see, the hole on the ball barrel base is elongated, and that's to cater for different length or tolerance issues to with your stock. Okay, you don't really have to worry about that or why it's going to be like that. You just need to know that when you install this and the block here, the Tokyo Marui block, there is going to be play. So it is going to move up and down a little bit. Don't worry about that. That's what's going to happen so far. So now I reinstall the Tokyo Marui block, just like this. It goes on top like that. And all you do is screw it in. And that's these two screws tightened. I've just done that one there and that one there. I never over tighten these because you can strip the threads. As you can see, there is some slight movement there. Okay, as I said, that's going to be adjusted when you install it into the stock, just to make sure it's in the correct place. Because if the stock ends here, you could move this slightly forward until it bungs up against the backstop of the actual stock, depending on what stock you use. And now, as you can see, there's a huge gaping hole in the front there. So what I'm going to install is a PDI end cap, and this one is threaded. It's threaded in 14mm counterclockwise threads. As you already know what's going on. I'm going to be installing a silencer stroke suppressor on the front. Well, actually I'm installing a tracer unit because that's what I'm going to be using this for. So this just goes on like that. Nice and tight. There we go, and that's installed there. So I'm going to install this onto the receiver now. And those of you that are new to the VSR platform, if you tighten this outer barrel all the way down, the orientation is incorrect. So all you do is back this out a little bit there until it's aligned like that. Okay, can you see that? And what you want to make sure is the little screw hole on there lines up. See, you see the threads in the way there. You just want to move that out of the way so that it's roughly in this area here. Okay. Then you reinstall the tiny little Tokyo Marui screw in there, but you don't want to over tighten it. You just want to install it in there nice and snug. And once that screw is installed, there is going to be some play on the outer barrel. Don't worry about that yet, because this is going to be held in place with the stock. Oh, the bane of all VSR builders. I totally forgot to install the nylon ring that goes in there. So I'm going to take this outer barrel off and then put this in. Those of you that are wondering why this is white, it is the original Tokyo Marui cylinder ring. And that's the one I'm going to be using, because the black ones that come with the Action Army receiver are slightly too, their internal diameter is slightly large, okay? Whereas as I'm going to be using an Action Army twisted cylinder, or the regular cylinder for that matter, same size, the Tokyo Marui ring seems to be a slightly better fit for that. That's what I find anyway. But you can use whatever one fits your build. One thing I forgot to mention about the inner barrel is that it is 6.00 millimeter internal diameter, which is tighter than tight. This is why they advertise them as power barrels, because as some of you know, the tighter the tolerance of your inner barrel, the FPS will be ever so slightly higher. So that's why they call it a power barrel, because it kind of raises your FPS. Now the question is, how accurate is this type of barrel? Now we kind of know, or well, those of you that don't know, 6.03 for these types of platforms are for best accuracy and I guess best distance, okay? 6.03 millimeters. For my needs, because this is going to be an indoor short distance, short barreled rifle, fun build kind of thing, like an office rifle, I'm not too bothered about that. Plus, I did think about going for the 6.03 millimeter internal diameter inner barrels, but there were none in stock at the time, so I just went for the 6.00. And we'll see how that works out. I'm sure it'll be fine, because I'm not going to be shooting any distance, literally. It's literally just going to be shooting like very, very short distances, just for fun anyway. It's a fun build. So I've just finished lubing the bolt, as you can see there. Now I'm going to install it into the receiver. So I'm just gonna put this in very slightly. There we go. Remember to pull the trigger so it can actually insert. And very gently just put it in like that. And that's installed. Now we just have to make sure that we've got the spring guide stopper in the bottom there, which I put to one side and cannot find any more. There it is. Right, it goes in this way, remember? Like this. A little dip towards the front. And it should just find its own way in, like that. And you push these little two tabs to the back so they are completely aligned. They're spacers really, not tabs. And then this screw just goes in there like that. I'm really excited, by the way, guys. It may not seem on camera. I'm trying to stay composed so I don't look like, so it doesn't sound like I'm a raging lunatic, but I'm actually really excited at the moment. Nice and tight. There we go. Trigger's fine. Let me see. Right, just going to quickly check for function. Seems to be fine. Just going to rack the bolt back. Nice. Now let's check for compression. First test of compression, just to make sure it's going to be fine. Oh wow, that's smooth. Okay, just gonna hold the inner barrel and give it a couple of seconds, I guess, just to make sure it's not creeping forward. Nice, very happy with that. So I'm now going to install a trigger guard. This one is made by PDI. Again, it's very nice. This one is a little bit worn. As you can see, it's from one of our old builds. I believe this was a Type R trigger guard, so it resembles the Remington slightly more authentically. And we're also going to be using a metal pillar. So this goes here like that, and this just kind of slots on like that. And then you have a screw that screws them on. Now, I'm not going to be using the Tokyo Marui one, the original Tokyo Marui one. I have actually purchased from PDI the trigger guard screw. So it just installs like this. I think, yep, I should just screw in there. Hopefully it fits with no issues. I'm just going to screw that in. And that's what it looks like installed. If you've just bought a PDI trigger guard and you can see that there's some parts missing, that's because we had to modify it to accommodate an Action Army trigger unit back in the days. This was a few years ago. Don't worry about that, and don't worry about that recess. You don't need that if you're using an S trigger by Custom Springerworks. So that's what it looks like installed. Super psyched about that. Do know that when you install this like this into a stock, this may have some trouble going in due to the angles, the sides, this having to slip in. If that happens, all you do is loosen that screw so that it kind of flops about and can fall into place, and it goes in place like a jigsaw. Now I'm going to do a really fun part of the build, or a part that I've really been looking forward to, and that is the top rail for the scope or sights that you're using. Now I'm going to be doing something slightly different. This is what traditionally you would use a Tokyo Marui top rail there. There are different types made by different companies, but as you can see, the Tokyo Marui paint just doesn't live up to what we're trying to achieve here. So I'm not going to be using that. I'm going to be going with a slightly different sight mounting base, okay, so, or a platform. Now, as you can see, normally you'd install the rail across here. Oh, one thing I want to talk about quickly while we're here looking at this is, oh wow, look at that. The matching paint of the PDI bull barrel base there and the Action Army one-piece receiver. Very nice. You can see that the paint is almost completely 100% matching. In fact, you can't even tell. Just a small thing, small detail that we want to talk about, because if you've done enough builds over the years, you'd see that you can have mismatched paints in so many areas, and sometimes it's an eyesore, depending on how you feel and how OCD you are. If you're someone like us, then it stands out quite a bit. So let's get into the rail, okay? If you want to see what the rail looks like, I'll quickly put it on top now. The Tokyo Marui one. This is traditionally what it would look like, just something like that. Yeah, not really something you want to look at, is it? So what we're going to go with is something, again, by PDI. Again, we love this company. They are very expensive, their parts. So do you need their parts? Probably not. But if you want to treat yourself and go for PDI and you have the money, then go for it. We spent the last of our budget on these parts, but we just, everything is just, we needed this. I mean, if it was a budget build, it would not look like this. We wouldn't go for any of this. It would be much different, our build, but we wanted this to be something very, very special for us, since it's, in a sense, our first build. I'm talking too much. Okay, right, so let's talk about these. These are separated, or separate as they call them, mount bases. So rather than being one unit, it's two there. Now, the reason for that is because on the original Remington or bolt action, this platform receivers, this cutout here, you see that? Normally goes from here all the way over to there, all the way here, all the way down. So you've got a huge window. I keep knocking this. Sorry guys. So this is a huge window, and what that is when you eject the round or the brass, it has a massive window for it to come out. It's also easier to load rounds in there, and if you have a jam, it's easier to clear. So if you go with a mount base like this, a one-piece version, it covers the window on the top, which narrows the area for you to work with on the receiver. That's why I believe Night Force, these are modeled after, Night Force has created two-part The real steel is called Night Force, of course. This isn't. This is made by PDI, which is a copy of the Night Force 2-part mounts, like that. Kind of, it goes on there, and that will allow the window there to still be open, and you have a much bigger working area, making everything much simpler for everybody. Okay, so that's what we're going to do, but the reason I'm going for a 2-piece mounting base is because I'm not going to be using a scope when it is in its short form. I'm going to have a rear sight on the back, and obviously there is no rear sight for the back that you can get, so we're going to custom do one. And that's this here, like that. Okay, so we're going to have this mounted on the front. Now there's one thing you need to know about these PDI separate mount bases, and that is they come with 4 screws. Let's see if I can find them. Let me just show you. That's the sticker there, like that. This is what they come as, separate mount base, which is a Night Force replica. Okay, those of you that can read Japanese, there you go. Okay, so let's talk about these screws that it comes with. And these screws, pun intended, will screw you up if you don't know about, oh, there they are right there. And these screws will, pun intended, screw you up if you don't know about distance and tolerances and stuff like that. So these are the 4 screws that come with the mount base. Now, PDI are usually really good when they do stuff and they engineer things, but this time they really dropped the ball, and this is not catastrophic, but it is a really bad thing that they missed. Okay, now the 4 screws they give you are all for the same length. Okay, all 4 of the screws are the same length. That's a problem because when you mount them on these mounting positions here for the rail, that screw there should be incredibly shallow, and that's because the threads from the outer barrel that you normally use are shown there. You literally only have 2 or 3 turns before the screw interferes with the outer barrel, because that's not recessed. It literally is just, you'll be screwing into your outer barrel, and that could do some damage to the threads, and in the worst case scenario, warp some areas and make it very difficult to remove later. So what we have done here is we have removed some material and shortened a screw, and hopefully that will make it install slightly better. I don't know if you can see on camera, but that is slightly shorter. And that should allow us to install it correctly without any issues. Okay, so as you can see, has that one been shortened? Yes, that one's been shortened. We've got 2 shortened ones. You don't have to shorten 2 of them. You just need to shorten 1, but we'll tell you why we shortened 2 now. So let's install the first mount base. That is the one at the front there. Do bear in mind that the mounting positions and the distance of the screws are different. As you can see, what we have to do is match them up, match the holes up with the ones you're using, and it should work. So this one's the front one here, and that will go on there like that. Okay, now remember, the front screw has to be very short, the short one. So we've removed some material and made it incredibly short, so it doesn't impede with the outer barrel or the ball barrel base. So that's going to go in there like that, and we're going to install it now. Okay, just a few threads out, and that's the front mount base installed. And how you check for function is to make sure your screw that you reduced in length is short enough so it's not impeding the front barrel, is you just turn this slightly. And if you can turn that, you should be able to see the cylinder move as well, slightly. And if they both move, it means both of these screws are not impeding function. Okay, and that's something you also have to pay attention to when you're installing the rear. If the screws are too long, which they shouldn't be, if they are though, it means they're screwing into your physical cylinder, which is very bad. Okay, so before you go and rack this, once you've installed anything, try and turn it and see if they can move. If they can, you should be okay, and cautiously move the bolt to the rear just to have a look. Now, the reason we're not mounting this base to the rear there is because I'm installing a rear sight on it. And the rear sight that I've chosen is the rear sight from a KWA MK23 or Mark 23, however you say it, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. So this is the sight that it comes with, but you do need to know that it comes with a flat base there. So what I've done is I have worked this and kind of sanded it away in the center there, so you can see that there's a recess or a contour to match the receiver, and that way it can mount on top very snugly. Okay, but when you install this, well, I don't think anyone's going to do this, but I found that when I did that, the screw has to be shortened by quite a length. So I shortened it, and so that when I install this rear sight onto here, it doesn't screw into the cylinder and impede its function. So the reason I'm doing it that way is because when I install this, as you can see, it can move left and right. So it is fully adjustable. I'm going to install that now. And this is what the rear sight looks like once it's installed. As you can see, there are no inserts at the moment for the 2 dots. Those are actually just, if I can actually capture this on camera, they're just holes at the moment. But you can make or buy inserts that go in there depending on what you're trying to achieve. Okay, so as you can see, that is very, very snugly and tightly held on there. It is now adjustable, and it is quite sleek looking as well. Right, so now it's time to do the front sight. You guys are probably wondering what sight I'm going to be using for the front sight, and that is, I went for this here. It is a sight by a company called Dominator, and I believe they made this sight for one of their shotguns. I'm not too sure. It was a couple of weeks ago when I bought it, but I can't really remember. So it is the fiber optics sight for one of their shotguns, I believe, and although the contour doesn't match completely to the outer barrel there, it is perfectly fine. It is almost 100% matching to the curve, so that's what I'm going to do. Now, they do include a screw there for you to screw it down into whatever you're mounting it into. I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to be using a super sticky double-sided sticky pad, which is very, very hard wearing, and you've got to be careful when you're buying industrial double-sided tape, because whatever it sticks to, it's ripping off, whether that be wallpaper, your skin, all these metal parts. Okay, so that's what I'm using. It's pretty much the same way Tokyo Marui mount their front sight on their standard VSR barrels. Well, they don't do any other VSR barrels, but you get the picture. The front sight on their barrels, those are stuck on there like that as well, with just a really, really industrial strength double-sided tape. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and this is what it will look like once it's installed, just like that. Okay, so you get kind of like a front sight, a backup front sight for it, which I thought was pretty cool. So now it comes to the point where we're going to install these parts onto the stock, and traditionally these VSRs come with these components here, which are the magazine catch. What they do is they simply catch onto the magazine via that part there, as you can see, to hold onto it. So when you push the button, which is this little round part here, as you can see, it just releases the magazine, and it's a very simple part. Not many people need to change anything on that, but what we realized when we went to the PDI website in Japan is that they have released some of these see-through parts made from some very simple materials, and although we don't need to replace anything, you don't need to do this, we just thought we'd buy them to try out, and just so that we can report back whether they function correctly or incorrectly. Okay, so a little bit of a learning video as well. You get to learn a lot of stuff. If these parts are going to be really terrible at what they do, we're going to tell you, but it should be fine. I mean, it's just a basic part. Right, so now let's install them. So we just tried installing those 2 parts as we just said, and unfortunately, yes, it was really bad. The material has a tendency to bind and stick against each other, creating a lot of friction. It would feel almost gummy to each other. So if, to put it simply, if you think about if you have 2 hard pieces of plastic, they would glide against each other. But if the plastic feels kind of soft, like these parts do, they would literally stick into each other, and that's what it feels like. They also feel kind of weak in comparison. I mean, I was able to sand off a little bit of material to try and smooth it off, but to no avail. Maybe you guys would have better luck if you were using these parts. They kind of understood, PDI understood that these parts would bind against each other, so what they did was they used a really, really strong spring here. It was almost impossible to install, but we did manage to install it and try it out, but it didn't really work out. So we've gone with the tried and tested Tokyo Marui version, the one that comes with the original VSR, and that works flawlessly, so no problems there. So no need to change that. And we've also, as you can see, installed the receiver into the stock, and it's starting to look very, very nice. You've got the rear sight there. I really like that. Still considering whether to put glow in the dark, some element of glow in the dark in there, glow in the dark rods maybe, or I don't think I can go with the fiber optic on the rear, so I probably won't. But let's install these stock screws here. Now let's install the stock screws for the VSR platform. Some of you already know, short screw at the front, long screw at the rear. So we're going to install those now. This is what the unit looks like installed into the stock. Sorry about the background noise. It is a Sunday and there are a lot of people in the building. And sorry if the angles aren't very good from now on. The work desk I'm working at and filming from is very limited. So anyway, this is what it looks like. I'm very happy with the build, the quality, how it looks. I'm very, very happy. Yes, it is very short at the moment. I'll show you what it looks like if I install a tracer unit on there, because that's what I plan to do. This is what it'll look like if I install the incredibly short Ditec tracer unit, which I have done a video on. If I haven't released it, it'll be up on the channel in a couple of weeks. But if that looks too short for your liking, this is what it looks like with a Tokyo Marui tracer on there. It all depends on the look that you want to go for. I was trying to go for an incredibly short look, which I believe I've achieved with this unit here. As you can see, it is very short. I can't get the whole thing in, but that's pretty much as much as I can get in the angle. But yeah, that's what it looks like. I'm pretty happy with this setup. If I want to go super short, then I guess I'll use the Ditec one. If not, then I'll stick with the Tokyo Marui one. So let's install a sight on there. So since this is for short range, I'm going with a red dot sight. Yes, this is the Vortex Spark 2, which I kept from previous collection. Let's put this on there and see how it looks. And this is what it looks like with the Spark 2 red dot sight installed. I know this isn't going to be to everybody's taste, but it's kind of like what I'm going for. Anyway, I really enjoy the look of this. It really does appeal to me at the moment. It's kind of like, I know it doesn't qualify, but it's kind of like a scout rifle almost, you know, kind of that quick access bolt action kind of, I don't know, survival gun or whatever it is. But this is what it looks like. I'm really happy with it at the moment. Let's get some figures down. Let's go to the chrono. Okay, so we're going to do a chronograph test now. We're using an X-Cortec X3200 Mark III. As usual, the BBs we're using are the Tokyo Marui Perfect Hit 0.2 grams. Those are the non-biodegradable ones. This is also going to double as a magazine testing for us. So we've got two magazines here that we're going to test. The first one being the Maple Leaf magazines. Okay, loaded with those Tokyo Maruis now. Let's see what shoe chrono's at. Okay, the magazine goes in, feels a bit tight. Going in, as you can see, it protrudes slightly at the bottom there. Not perfect, but not a deal breaker, I guess. As long as the magazine feeds BBs, then I suppose it's doing the job we need it to. Okay, let's fire the first BB and see what we're chronoing at. 430 looks pretty good. I'm happy with that at the moment. Oh, I just had too much sugar, sorry. 430 again, happy with that. 431.3, still happy. Bearing in mind, guys, those of you that are thinking, hey, that's not very high FPS, shouldn't it be shooting 430 again? Shouldn't it be shooting shouldn't it be shooting 500 and beyond? No, because although it has an M150 spring in it, the inner barrel is incredibly short, incredibly short. Okay, a lot of people won't even be expecting anything above probably 350 in this, but it's pretty good. It's working okay. Right, okay, so that was the Maple Leaf magazine. We're going to now try the Action Army magazine. I really like the look of this magazine, basically because it's see-through and I can see how many BBs visually we have left inside the magazine. So here we go. Right, this one, you have to angle this one properly when you put it in. If it's slightly misaligned, it's going to hang up a little bit, okay, but it looks good. The fit looks good. Let's see if they actually feed the BBs. Okay, carry on with this chrono test. 429.9. Really? Well, I'm quite happy with that. Let's go again. 431.3. Seems to be pretty stable. around this this mark. Sorry about background noise again. 429.6 appears to be very consistent. The spring I'm talking about. And 429.7, and I guess that proves that yes, all the BBs feed, so I'm happy with that. Brilliant. Okay, so if you need a spare magazine, you could go with the maple leaf one, which has a little bit of trouble going in, as it kind of protrudes a little bit. It felt a bit tight going in anyway. It felt like it was too fat for the magazine well. The Action Army one went in, but you had to angle it correctly or perfectly so it would go in straight. I angled it ever so slightly at an angle and it felt like it was hanging up, but once I got it in there, it felt great and it looks great. And visual BB count, very important, I guess. So you don't always worry how many have I got left in there. You can actually see. Okay, so that concludes the chrono test. Well, that kind of draws to the end of this build series. As you can see, we've got the long barrel here, but as you can see, her current FPS is at 430. So if I was to go outside and game or plink with this outside somewhere and I needed the extra, I could just take off the stock, unscrew the barrel, and install this longer barrel, and then I'll be at, what was it, 517 FPS, give or take. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I can't believe it's over. That was pretty quick. As you can see, the build is, I'm really pleased with it. You can see the front sight over there with the rear sight, so it kind of looks like a scout rifle, and then you've got the mid-mounted red dot sight for quick target acquisition, kind of showing that this is for short medium range use. I'm super happy that it's running at about 430 FPS, which is perfect for the distances I'm shooting at. I can still use heavy BBs and not worried that the BB is going to be crawling there by the time it gets halfway there. So there are some mods that I haven't done. As you know, the stock here around this section is still very hollow and empty. Those of you with VSRs can knock on your stock and literally hear how much sound comes off that. Now, one of the normal things you would do is people would normally stuff the rear of the stock with foam just to sound deaden it and stop any vibrations and any excessive sound when you take a shot. I guess everyone wants to be as quiet as possible when they're using these platforms. I'm not going to be doing that because I'm planning a different mod for mine. I'm going to try and create and install and fill in a trapdoor on the rear, so it has a little mini compartment that I can put stuff in. I don't know, whatever I'm going to put in there, but it's always good to have extra storage on your rifles. That's just one of the quirks that I really enjoy, is having like extra storage and stuff. You know when you get the like ARs with the pistol grip and it's got like the mag pull compartment in the bottom where you can just put stuff. I really enjoy things like that. So I'm going to enjoy using this at night, primarily in the office and stuff, playing around. When I say office, I don't mean like physically in an office, I mean in my work area. So I'll be shooting, I don't know, anywhere from 10 meters all the way up to probably about 50 meters if I shoot into the field. But that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the videos of this build series. I hoped I brought some insight. One thing I will touch down on, actually, let me just show you the stock and what it sounds like. You can hear that sounds really hollow, and if you take off this butt pad, which can just be pulled off, there'll be a compartment in the rear that you can put stuff. I'm going to try and make a trapdoor later when I actually get the tools to do so. Now, right now, we'll have a look at the screws underneath, because I didn't really talk about this. I don't know if there's going to be any newcomers to the hobby and they're going to be like, oh wow, this is really simple, this is all I do. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick tip when you're installing everything into your stock. Always install the front screw first, and sometimes it can be misaligned because there is movement, it can move about. Okay, so what you want to do is try and move the block as far backwards as possible until the holes and the threading holes are completely aligned. What you don't want to do is when you're installing this and before you get to the end point of where it's at maximum tightness, not maximum but quite tight, you don't want to have any friction. Okay, it can't go in slanted, it needs to go in straight, and it needs to be almost frictionless when it goes in. That's very important, so nothing is installed canted or not canted, installed at an angle. Okay, so install that one first, and once you've done that, you can see that there is a wider area from front to back where you can install, and that's to allow for the fitment of everything. Okay, if you was to install this one first, then that one would have trouble going in. So that's it. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I mean, it looks, to me, in my eyes, it looks beautiful. I'm a sucker for SBRs, short barreled rifles. I really like the short platforms. The shorter the better, but they do have to be functional. You know, you can't just have like, you can't just chop down everything and make it work that way. I like the way that this functions. The FPS I can live with, 430, yeah, I'm happy with that. I mean, I did try super short barrels before and we were getting about 350 FPS because we were using salvage parts basically. So that's the end of the build series. I'm really happy. Thank you very much for joining me on this adventure. I'm pretty sad that it's over actually, because for me, working on the rifles and setting them up is actually probably the best part of the hobby. I don't really game. I don't game. So this is pretty much it. It's just getting parts together, finding how they go together, how you're going to install them, and making the platform the way you want it. So thanks very much for joining me. Hope you enjoyed the build series, and I will see you next time.